What's going on there, YouTube? And welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, guys, so basically, we are going to do Final Crisis. I asked you guys a couple weeks ago? Maybe last week? I don't know. Either way, I asked you guys if we should cover Final Crisis, because Final Crisis is very important for a lot of different characters, especially two. Batman and the Flash. Now, the reason why I say Batman is because around this time, Grant Morrison was working on Batman. He was writing Batman, and this dude had done a lot of things over on the Batman title, like introducing Damian Wayne, also giving us the resurrection of Ra's al Ghul. And so with all those things happening, of course, Grant Morrison wanted more. He wanted an event, and DC gave him one, and that came Final Crisis. Now, Final Crisis actually did start in a book before the actual main story. So it did have a prelude, but the prelude was only one singular book, and that book was Justice League of America, Volume 2, number 21. And so with that, we have to cover this book first before we actually jump into the main Final Crisis story. Now, with that being said, this video is also going to have Final Crisis number 1 and also Final Crisis Requiem, because those two books are a great way, had a hard time saying great, a great way to start off our coverage over Final Crisis. It's one heck of an event. I know it did split the DC fan base. Some fans love it and some fans hate it. With me personally, what I read so far is not that bad, but it could have been better. But with that being said, I'm not done reading it yet as I'm recording this video right here. And so with that being said, here is the first part to our Final Crisis coverage. And so we're going to pick up with Justice League of America. And of course, this book was not written by Grant Morrison. Matter of fact, it was written by a guy known as McDuffie. Now, with that being said, though, McDuffie does a great job to kind of build up to what Grant Morrison is basically working to. And you see what I mean as we use this book as a way to kind of lead us into the Final Crisis storyline, the main storyline. Now, with that being said, though, we actually do pick up with Superman, Batman, and of Wonder Woman. Now, with that being said, right now you have the characters meeting up at the Hall of Justice, of course, the base of the Justice League. Now, remember, this is where basically the team meets up, but of course, this is the core group: Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman, the Trinity. They basically kind of decide how things are going to go with the League. And so right now you have the three characters coming together to kind of talk and decide what should be the future goals for the Justice League. Now, honestly, this moment right here is not that important, but I still want to cover it because it does show how close Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman are to one another. Because basically, you have Batman actually cracking jokes, which honestly, I find that funny because Batman these days, he barely cracks jokes. But this Batman right here, oh yeah, he does crack jokes, and of course he does show concerns, but his concerns for what's going on with the League are all for good reasons. But basically right now, it's kind of these three characters talking to one another about the idea of bringing in new characters to the League. And so of course these three characters are talking about that idea, but we can actually go ahead and move on to the next section, which of course to me personally really does kick off the Final Crisis event. And what I mean by that is we basically do pick up right now with the Human Flame. Now, the Human Flame is a very interesting character for a lot of different reasons. But basically, the Human Flame is one of those low list characters. Of course, he had fought the Martian Manhunter because DC was always trying to give the Martian Manhunter his own title. But of course, he needed his own rogue gallery. Like Batman has his own rogue gallery. Superman does. The Flash, Green Lantern, the list goes on. But when it comes to Martian Manhunter, he did have a few bad guys of his own, but not that many. And so, of course, the Human Flame kind of fit the bill, because when it came to the Martian Manhunter, one of his main weaknesses was fire. And so, of course, they gave him the Human Flame, somebody who can make fire. Now, the Human Flame is kind of ticked off because the Martian Manhunter basically had defeated him last time. And of course, the Human Flame, that's a problem. He hates losing, especially to a superhero, like most bad guys do. They hate losing to a superhero. Now, you do have the Human Flame right now basically robbing a bank. And when he leaves, he is confronted by Hawk Girl, and also Red Arrow. Or it could be Speedy, could be Arsenal. Honestly, I forgot at this point what his name was. But either way, you do have the two characters right now fighting against the Human Flame. Now, again, the Human Flame to me personally is one of those characters you can say he's not a top tier character. He's not your top tier bad guy. But of course, he does give Hawk Girl and Speedy, we'll call him Speedy for the time being, an actual challenge. Now, you do have Hawk Girl and Speedy being able to actually recover and kind of get the chance to maybe actually capture the Human Flame. But the problem is though, right when they're about to capture the Human Flame, well, that is the moment he is actually saved by Libra. And this is huge because Libra is going to be what Grant Morrison kind of used in the beginning of his Final Crisis event, kind of a way to kick off the entire thing. And so you have Libra basically say the Human Flame, but then you have Libra say, come with me because I have an offer for you. I can basically help you and I'm going to help you. Now you're probably wondering right now, hey Fresh, who in the world is Libra? Let me explain. So basically, Libra was a character who was trying to make sure the world is perfectly balanced. Hence the name Libra, the whole scales thing. He wants to make sure the world is perfectly balanced. And of course, when it came to the Justice League, always out there defeating bad guys, he feels like the world was not balanced. And so, of course, he made the Injustice Gang, the first one. Now, with that being said, though, basically, he made that gang to make sure the world was balanced. But Libra is a very powerful character of his own because besides having super strength and super durability, he's also able to persuade the mind of the weak. But on top of that, he's able to absorb half the power of each member of the Justice League, or really almost anybody he's confronted by. And of course, it makes him a very powerful character to go up against. Now, with that being said, though, he did save the Human Flame for a special reason, and he does bring the Human Flame to a very important meeting. Now, this photo right now may seem like this meeting is with a bunch of C-list characters. That is actually going to change when we dive into the main Final Crisis storyline. But for right now, yes, it does look like a bunch of C-list characters. And really, I take that back because you do have McDuffie actually change the idea of this meeting. Because at first, it was a C-list character meeting. But then when we actually pick back up with the meeting, you do have some A-list characters there. Like, of course, Lex Luthor, Grodd, and the list goes on. Now, this is where things get crazy because this is the moment you have Libra telling everybody in the room that basically his goal is to bring all the bad guys here together because the world is about to change. But with the world about to change, of course, it's going to be great for the world of bad guys. All the villains across the world are going to feel the change of the world. It's going to be very beneficial for them as the heroes are defeated or the heroes are gone. Now, of course, you're kind of wondering if you're Libra and your whole idea is that the world has to be perfectly balanced, then if you're saying the world is about to change for the betterment of evil, that means your world is no longer balanced. But hey, the story goes on. But either way, you then have Libra say he can show everybody that he is actually capable of giving everyone something they want, something they're begging to have. And of course, For Libra, he goes over to the Human Flame because the Human Flame was the last character he basically did recruit. But of course, the Human Flame is the perfect person to show the world that Libra is actually serious about making sure everybody gets the one thing they want. And basically, you have Libra say, Human Flame, what do you want? And you have the Human Flame say, I want the death of the Martian Manhunter. Kill him off. And for Libra, he's kind of like, done. I'll do it for you. You want him dead? I'll kill him for you. Don't worry. And this technically does start off Final Crisis. And now we can jump into Final Crisis number 1. Now, finally getting into Final Crisis number 1, we actually do pick up with somebody dying. Like their body is literally on fire and they're falling from the sky. Now, of course, while we have that happening right there, we also have Libra talking to his people, talking to basically the bad guys from across the world. And of course, the story does jump back and forth between that moment and also the guy who's dying right now, whose body is on fire. But basically, this is Libra trying to tell everyone in the room that right now a new age is coming. And with this new age, that means there is a new God. And basically, with a new God, you have someone going around spreading the word of that God. And the person to spread the word of that God is no other than Libra himself. It's basically him putting himself in a position where that whoever is this new God, he's the one who's going to spread the word of this new God. And of course, while he's saying that, that person is dying. The one we saw earlier, whose body is right now on fire and falling from the sky. Now, we actually do jump far back in time, and I mean very far back in time, where we basically pick up with a caveman. Now, this caveman is actually a character known as Antro. Now, Antro in the present day is a tad bit different because he went through a lot of different changes. But at this point in his life, he was just a regular caveman. Now, of course, that is the moment where he is actually confronted by Metron, one of the new gods. Now, with Metron, you basically have Metron actually teach this younger version of Antro how to make fire. And with fire being made, it comes in handy down the road. And the reason why, because right after Metron left, later on that day, Antro's tribe was attacked by another tribe. Now, with this tribe being under attack, basically Antro used fire as a way to basically defend his tribe, defend his people. And of course, this was the first time, apparently in DC Universe, where people had discovered fire. And that right there is somewhat important in what Grant Morrison is trying to say. Now, that is the moment where we actually do pick up with a character known as Dan Turpin. Now, Dan Turpin has been around in DC Comics for years. But with that being said, though, Dan Turpin was a cop in Metropolis. And on top of that, he was part of Metropolis Special Crimes Unit. Now, with him being on that unit for a while, of course, he's getting very close into retiring. Now, of course, he's right now working on a case where basically there are a bunch of missing babies. And right now, he's kind of just going around following the different clues that could possibly help him find the missing babies. Except when he goes to the docks, well, he finds what seems to be a dead body. And that dead body is no other than Orion, one of the new gods from Genesis. And things get even crazy because Orion is not dead just yet. But you have Orion actually get up. He grabs Dan Turpin to tell him that him is everywhere. They're not dead. They're everywhere, especially him. He's in you. He's in you all. And then you have Orion die. And it's kind of like, what just happened to Orion? Why in the world did he just die right here in front of Dan Turpin? Now, that is the moment where we actually jump over across town, where we actually do pick up with a character known as John Stewart. Yes, you heard that right, the third Green Lantern. I want to say he was the third Green Lantern, but either way, we actually pick up with John Stewart basically responding to what a ring is trying to tell him. And his ring is trying to tell him that something is going on. Something is happening in his area. Now, while you have John Stewart actually heading over to see what happened, why his ring's going crazy, in the sky, you have a lot of lighting happening. Now, this lighting is actually very important because this is going to kind of give us a hint on who is possibly coming back to life in this event down the road. But for right now, it's John Stewart on his way to investigate and really to see what Dan Turbin saw earlier, the dead body of Orion. Now, getting back over to Dan Turbin, we actually do see him right now meeting up with Renee Montoya. And of course, at this point in DC Comics, she had become the Question. Now, the Question in DC Comics was always basically a character who was kind of like detective. And so right now, Renee Montoya is the new Question, meaning that basically she is the new detective in the area. And of course, with Dan Turbin still trying to figure out what happened to the missing children, he's coming to Renee hoping that she has some kind of information that could basically help him. And so what she does hand him is a pamphlet. And this pamphlet is to a club. And this club, get this, is called the Dark Side Club. And so of course he's kind of like, okay, I guess I'll go here. Now, of course, you do have John Stewart basically arriving at the scene of the crime, the death of Orion. And this is huge because this means basically a god has died. And that right there is really huge. Now, with that being said, when John Stewart arrives, of course, Hal Jordan is already there. And you have Hal tell John to alert the Justice League. They need to know about this. A god has died. And with this god's death, that could only mean bad things are about to come down the road. And you have Hal tell John that he already called up the Guardians to warn them what basically had happened. Now, that is the moment where we actually do jump over to some Teen Titans. And the reason why, because you have some Teen Titans going to a location, a special location, which is right now the location of where Metron's chair was left behind. And this is huge because Metron was a new god. And if he's missing, that's a problem. That could possibly mean that he is dead. And so with that, you have the Teen Titans going over to the chair of Metron. But when they arrived, they are confronted by Mirror Master and Dr. Light. Now, the reason why those two characters are there, because these two characters are working for Libra, and Libra wants the chair of Metron. And so you have Dr. Light and basically Mirror Master being able to take out these Teen Titans and also grab the chair of Metron to tell us whatever is Libra planning to do is going to be big. It's going to be very huge. And of course, it could possibly change the entire DC universe. And matter of fact, speaking of Libra, we actually do pick up with him right now, talking to all the different villains that he had recruited are the ones he's trying to recruit, especially Lex Luthor. Now, in the last chapter, we saw Lex Luthor arrived at the meeting, but that was it. This is now Libra trying to convince Lex Luthor to stay with him, to join his side, to join forces, to basically wipe out the superheroes, because it's now time for the Earth to change. The change is to make the Earth better for super villains. Now, with that being said, Lex Luthor is one of those characters you just can't say a few things to him and think that basically he is going to join you. You have to show him your worth and work for him. Like, you have to show your worth and work so hard to prove to him that basically you're somebody he considered worth his time. And so with that, you have Libra show Lex Luthor that he's somebody who's worth Lex Luthor time, that he's somebody special, because Lex Luthor needs to see that. And so you have Libra say, I came here and told you guys that I will basically help every single one of you guys get the one thing you want. And so I helped out the human flame first, and I got him what he wanted. He wanted the death of the Martian Manhunter. And that is the moment you have Libra pull out Martian Manhunter to tell us that he was the one on fire. He was the one dying. And this is Libra showing everyone in the room that he is serious, that he can give everybody what they want if they join forces. And he gave the human flame the almost dead body of the Martian Manhunter. Now, we do jump back over to Turban, and right now we actually see him going to that club. And remember, that club was called the Dark Side Club. But when he walks into the club, he is basically confronted by Darkseid himself. Now, I know you're thinking, hey, Fresh, this is not Darkseid, but actually it is, because there was a storyline right before this one known as The War of Heavens. I forgot the actual title, but basically a lot of the new gods had died. Now, when they had quote unquote died, their spirits or essences basically took over regular human bodies or came back as regular humans. And so with that, Darkseid was one of those characters that came back as a regular human. But here is the big thing though. Darkseid tells us that he basically solved the anti-life equation, and he used it on the missing children that Turban was looking for. And that is the moment you have Turban get confronted by the children that went missing that he was looking for. And of course, they're under Darkseid's control. Now, that is the moment where we basically jump outside of existence, where we basically pick up with the multiversal monitors. Yes, you heard that right, the multiversal monitors. Now, with that being said, right now, these monitors basically watch over the multiverse in a way. Now, you do have one of the monitors actually on trial, and that is Nix Utan. And I really hope I pronounced this guy's name correctly, but basically he was the monitor of Earth 51. Now here's the big thing though. Earth 51 was destroyed, and basically it was his job to protect that planet. And of course, with that Earth being destroyed, you have the monitors say he is sentenced to live a regular human life on New Earth, the main DC universe. And so he was sent away to never come back to the home of the monitors. But here's the problem though. Another monitor was actually falling in love with him, and that is Monitor Ouija Del. Yeah, these names get crazy like no other. But either way, Ouija Del was in love with Nix. And of course, with him gone, she's very sad. But of course, we come to find out that basically another monitor, Rox Ogama, he planned all of this, and he has more plans for Nix, the exile monitor, to come down the road. Now, we actually do pick up with Antro. And remember, Antro was basically the caveman that Metron met in the far distant past that basically taught Antro how to use fire, which of course Antro used. But here's the thing though. You have Antro basically look out into the world. In a blink of an eye, he sees the end of New York, like the ruins of New York. New York is completely wrecked. But then when he blinks again, everything is back to normal. He's back in his own regular time. And so with that, he's wondering what in the world just happened right there. What's going on with the world he's basically living in? But then to close on Final Crisis number 1, we actually do pick up with a random student. Now this student is waking up and kind of wondering where in the world he is at. But of course, before he's actually able to continue to think about that, well, that is the moment he's watching the news and he hears the death of the Martian Manhunter. And of course, that's the end of Final Crisis number 1. Now, that is the moment where we basically pick up with Final Crisis Requiem. And this is actually very important. And the reason why, because this is the book where basically you have the funeral for the Martian Manhunter. And I must say, his casket is really nice. But either way, this is the moment where you really have the heroes saying goodbye to the Martian Manhunter. And this is how important Final Crisis was. Because when this book dropped, it really says the Martian Manhunter is dead. He's no longer around, and that is it. And that is huge, not just for the fans, but also for the Justice League as well. Now, we do jump back in the past where basically we do pick up with that moment, or really after that moment, where we actually saw Libra, we thought, was killing the Martian Manhunter. Because right now we do pick up with some characters that do work for Libra, and right now they're using pyro tranquilizers in the past to kind of keep the flames on the Martian Manhunter. But of course, this is a way to kind of make the Martian Manhunter get weak, but on top of that, making sure that he cannot fight back. Because when it comes to Martian Manhunter, one of his main weaknesses is fire. And so it makes sense to make sure that he does stay on fire as a way to keep him weak and unable to actually fight back against Libra and the rest of his crew. Now, of course, Libra is doing this all for the human flame, but to also show his crew that he is actually a capable leader. And you actually do have Libra kind of give a small speech right before he's actually able to stab the Martian Manhunter, where it does seem like basically he's saying, look what I did for you guys. Look what I was able to give you guys. I gave you the Martian Manhunter. I gave you this, a guy who is defeated and weak. Look what I did for you. And this is huge because you have everyone actually looking at Libra like, this dude's legit. Like, this dude is actually legit. Look what he did. He was able to do this to the Martian Manhunter. And that right there is huge. And so, of course, you do have some characters begin to kind of change their opinion of Libra. But of course, right when Libra goes to attack or stab the Martian Manhunter to basically kill him, you actually have the Martian Manhunter seeing Libra back flying. And of course, this is now the Martian Manhunter trying to escape, even though we know in the present day, he does not escape. Now, of course, that is the moment where you basically have the Justice League appear. And so we're left to believe that basically right now, the Justice League actually appeared to come save the Martian Manhunter's life. That they found out that basically he was in trouble. That maybe he called out to them. That maybe they just realized that he was somewhere lost or he didn't show up for a certain meeting. But either way, they all came here, the Justice League, to save their lost friend, to help their lost friend fight against this army of villains. But that is the moment we're going to realize that basically right now, this is not the Justice League. That basically right now, this is just the Martian Manhunter playing with the minds of the villains, because that's his powers. He's able to read your mind, make your mind believe things that are not actually there, and that is what he's doing right now. He is making everyone believe, oh my God, the Justice League is here, but they're not. And so you have Libra stab the Martian Manhunter right in the chest to basically kill him off. But right before the Martian Manhunter dies, he sends out this message, a very important message. And what the Martian Manhunter actually did was tell everyone that he is dead, that he basically died, that he's no longer going to be here on Earth. And he's letting everyone know that he has died, or he's passing away, basically. That he's telling everyone, it was great being with you. It was great being a teammate. It was great being like a brother to you guys. But this is where I'm dying. It's everyone close to Martian Manhunter finding out that this man is dead. And this right here is actually very huge for a lot of different characters. Now, of course, you're probably wondering, How in the world did they find out about the death of the Martian Manhunter? How did the Justice League find out? Well, they found out because Nightwing was in New York City. And while he was there just swinging around, minding his business, well, that is the moment he found the dead body of the Martian Manhunter, letting other characters know that basically he is dead. The characters he did not reach out with his psychic message when he was stabbed to death, they're now finding out that basically the Martian Manhunter is now dead. Now, there is a section where you basically have the book kind of go over the origin of Mars in the DC universe, go over the origin of the Martians, and really go over the origin of the Martian Manhunter. But honestly, I'm not going to cover it here. And the reason why, because I kind of want to cover the origin of the Martian Manhunter in a separate video, because I really want to focus more on the idea about this character dying and how much it meant to the Justice League. And with his death, DC actually gave him an entire one-shot about his death. That's how huge the Martian Manhunter was when it came to DC Comics and fans and the characters in the book. But this is where we're going to end our Final Crisis Part 1 coverage. And then we're going to cover Part 2 later on this week. So with that being said, I do hope you enjoyed today's comic book video. And if you do, please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, I'll see y'all next time. Later.